America is not number one. Not anymore. Not in the things that determine how your Tuesday morning actually feels. Not in the things that determine whether you can afford to get sick. Not in the things that determine whether the decades of work you put in will produce the retirement you were promised. And the country that exposed this truth for me was not France. Not Germany. Not Canada or Australia or any of the countries Americans typically reference in these conversations. It was Malaysia. A country most Americans cannot accurately place on a map. A country that does not appear in most conversations about quality of life. A country that I visited with every assumption intact, America first, everything else arranged somewhere below, and left with those assumptions permanently, quietly, and irreversibly reorganized. Here is the hidden truth that nobody tells you before you go. The moments that change your mind in Malaysia are not the extraordinary ones. They are not the skyline or the food or the ancient rainforest or the $350 apartment with the sea view. The moments that change everything are the ordinary ones. The Tuesday morning ones. The doctor's appointment ones. The end-of-month bank statement ones. And once you have seen what ordinary looks like somewhere else, once you have felt in your body what daily life costs when the system is not working against you, you cannot unsee it. Stay with me. Because what I found in Malaysia did not just change how I think about that country. It changed how I understand the one I came from. But wait. Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential content. Comment "I subscribe" below and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. I want to start with the assumption most Americans carry into this comparison without ever examining it consciously. America at the top. Everyone else arranged somewhere below. Not aggressively. Not in a way that ever gets spoken aloud. Just as a background operating assumption, the way you hold an assumption that has never been seriously challenged. American healthcare is the best in the world. Because it is the most expensive, and expensive must mean best. American opportunity is unmatched. Because the income ceiling is the highest, even if the floor is lower than most people want to look at. Living anywhere else would feel like settling. Like choosing a diminished version of the life you were supposed to have. A 2023 Gallup World Poll found that Americans consistently rate their own country's healthcare, economic opportunity, and governance significantly higher than what external research and objective measurement actually shows. The gap between how Americans perceive their systems and how those systems perform is among the largest of any high-income country surveyed. That gap is not a character flaw. It is the product of never having a serious comparison point. Malaysia was my comparison point. And the first thing it showed me was not something exotic or culturally distant. It was a doctor's appointment. I had a respiratory infection. Nothing serious. The kind of thing that in the United States I would have managed at home for a week, maybe gone to urgent care if it persisted, paid my deductible, waited 2 hours, and left with a bill I would be thinking about for the next 3 months. In Kuala Lumpur, someone told me about a private clinic nearby. I walked in. I was seen within 20 minutes by a qualified physician. He examined me thoroughly, asked the right questions, gave me a clear diagnosis, and prescribed medication. The consultation cost $22 US. The medication was dispensed on site. It cost $11. Total, $33. 30 minutes. I sat in that pharmacy and felt something I had never felt at an American doctor's office. I felt genuinely taken care of, without simultaneously feeling financially exposed. Without the background calculation of what this was going to cost me. Without the specific dread that has become so normal in American healthcare that most people no longer recognize it as unusual. That was the first crack in everything I thought I knew. Now here is the data that explains why that crack matters. The Commonwealth Fund's 2023 Mirror Mirror report, which compares healthcare systems across 11 high-income countries, ranked the United States last overall. Not second to last. Last. In healthcare outcomes, equity, administrative efficiency, and cost. The most expensive healthcare system in the world, producing the worst outcomes among comparable nations. The US spends $12,914 per person per year on healthcare, according to 2023 CMS National Health Expenditure data. Malaysia spends $1,080 per person per year. And the quality at internationally accredited Malaysian private facilities is not a fraction of American quality. It is genuinely competitive, at a fraction of the cost. 41% of American adults carry medical debt, the highest proportion of any high-income country in the world. The average American household carries $2,500 in medical debt, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation's 2024 health survey. A standard specialist visit with insurance costs $250 to $500 out of pocket after deductible. Without insurance, $300 to $700 for a basic consultation. At Gleneagles Kuala Lumpur, Pantai Hospital and Prince Court Medical Centre, all holding Joint Commission International accreditation, the same global gold standard pursued by America's best hospitals, a specialist consultation costs $20 to $50 US. No insurance required. No prior authorization. No 3-week waiting period. Let me tell you about Carol Mitchell. Carol is 64 years old. Retired administrator from Phoenix, Arizona. She spent 35 years working, contributed to Medicare her entire career, and arrived at retirement facing a reality her contributions had not prepared her for. Her blood pressure medication, a standard generic formulation, cost $127 per month after Medicare coverage. On her fixed income, that number was not an inconvenience. It was a choice between medication and other things she also needed. For 3 years, Carol rationed her prescription, stretching supplies, taking slightly lower doses toward the end of cycles, doing the math that no person with a manageable, treatable condition should ever have to do in one of the wealthiest countries in the history of the world. She visited her daughter in Kuala Lumpur for 2 weeks. She saw a doctor about a minor separate issue while she was there. The consultation cost $22. She mentioned the blood pressure medication she used at home. The physician prescribed the equivalent. 3 months supply. $18. She sat in that pharmacy and looked at the receipt and felt something she needed a moment to identify. It was anger. Not at Malaysia. At the 3 years. At the rationing. At the fact that this quality, accessible, affordable medical care had existed the entire time she had been quietly making herself sicker in Phoenix in order to afford a system that was supposed to be the best in the world. Carol returned to Phoenix. She researched the MM2H program, Malaysia My Second Home. 18 months later, she relocated to Penang permanently. Her monthly healthcare costs dropped from $340 to $45. She takes her medication every day now. On schedule. Without calculation. If you want to verify the cost differences yourself, the International Federation of Health Plans publishes an annual comparative price report showing procedure costs across countries. It is publicly available. The numbers are not subtle. But healthcare was just the first crack. Because the second ordinary moment, involving nothing more dramatic than paying rent and buying groceries, hit me even harder. And it changed how I think about what working hard is actually supposed to produce. The average American spends more on basic monthly existence than the average Malaysian earns in an entire month. And the American version of that existence, the $4,200 to $5,800 monthly spend documented by the Bureau of Labor Statistics as the average for a single American, is, by multiple quality of life measurements, less comfortable, less healthy, and less socially connected than what the Malaysian equivalent produces. Here are the 2025 numbers side by side. Average US monthly rent for a 1-bedroom apartment, $1,700 nationally, $2,800 or more in major cities. Average US monthly grocery spend for one person, $350 to $500. Average monthly health insurance premium for an individual, $456, according to Kaiser Family Foundation 2024. Average monthly car payment, $738, according to Experian 2024. Before entertainment, before clothing, before anything discretionary, a single American is spending $3,700 to $4,500 on the basics of being alive. In Kuala Lumpur, a modern, fully furnished 1-bedroom apartment in the city center, $400 to $700 per month. Monthly groceries for one person, $80 to $150. Healthcare, No monthly insurance premium required for routine care. Public transport monthly pass, $25 to $40. Total comfortable monthly spend, $1,000 to $1,600. Numbeo's 2025 Global Cost of Living Index ranks Kuala Lumpur as 68% cheaper than New York City, 54% cheaper than Los Angeles, and 61% cheaper than Chicago, for equivalent lifestyle quality. Here is what that means in human terms. Every dollar you earn remotely, every dollar of retirement income, every dollar of savings, goes approximately 3 times further in Malaysia than in most American cities. 3 times. That is not a marginal advantage. That is a structurally different life. David and Karen Park are both 58. From Seattle. David is a software engineer earning $120,000 per year, entirely remotely. Karen is a former teacher on early retirement. In Seattle, after rent, groceries, insurance, utilities, car payments, and the relentless baseline cost of existing in one of America's most expensive cities, they were saving less than $800 per month. On a 6-figure income. David's company went fully remote permanently. They ran the numbers on what their life would look like in Kuala Lumpur. Same income. Same job. Same employer. Projected monthly savings in Kuala Lumpur, $4,000 to $5,000. Karen said the night they ran those numbers, they sat in their Seattle kitchen in silence for a long time. Not because the decision was obvious, but because they had to sit with the feeling of it. The feeling of having worked this hard, for this long, and having it produce so much less than it should have. That the problem was not their effort or their intelligence or their choices. The problem was the math of the place they had been living in. They relocated to Kuala Lumpur. David works the same hours, the same projects, the same Slack channels. Karen has started a small online tutoring business. Their combined monthly saving is now $4,800. For the first time in their adult lives, they are building the retirement fund they had always intended to build but had never been able to actually accumulate in Seattle. The practical tool: use the WISE cost of living calculator alongside Numbeo. Input your actual numbers, not averages. The calculation takes 15 minutes and is almost always the most clarifying financial exercise a person at this crossroads has ever run. But money was not the moment that hit me most personally. Because the third realization was about something Americans rarely discuss openly but that shapes the experience of daily life more profoundly than almost anything else. Safety. The United States has the highest rate of gun violence of any high-income country in the world. By an extraordinary margin. Americans are 26 times more likely to be killed by gun violence than people in comparable high-income nations, according to research published in the American Journal of Medicine in 2023. The Gun Violence Archive recorded over 650 mass shooting events in the United States in 2023. More than one every single day. Active shooter drills are a normalized part of American childhood. A generation of American children has grown up practicing survival techniques for a scenario that children in most other countries have never been asked to consider. The Global Peace Index 2024 ranks the United States 132nd globally. Malaysia ranks 29th. Gun violence deaths per 100,000 people, United States, 12.8. Malaysia, 0.1. Rebecca Torres is 52 years old. Elementary school teacher from Houston, Texas. In 3 years, she participated in 14 active shooter drills. Her school district borders a district that experienced a mass shooting event during her tenure. She received a travel grant to visit Southeast Asia. She spent 2 weeks in Malaysia. On her 4th day, she walked into a shopping mall in Kuala Lumpur. A large, crowded mall, hundreds of people, noise, movement, the particular energy of a busy public space. And she realized, standing in the middle of it, that her body was not doing the thing it always does in crowded American spaces. The scanning. The noting of exits. The low-level environmental assessment, threat identification, crowd density awareness, the unconscious calculation that she had performed so automatically for so many years that she had stopped registering it as behavior. She had classified it as simply being conscious. In that mall, her body stopped doing it. Because the environmental signal that triggers it was not present. She felt the difference physically. Like a sound she had been hearing for so long, she had come to believe it was silence suddenly switching off. A 2024 study published in Lancet Public Health found that chronic exposure to gun violence risk, even without direct personal experience of violence, produces measurable psychological stress responses in American populations. Elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep, increased rates of anxiety disorder diagnosis, present even in people with no personal history of violence, driven simply by the background probability of American public life. Rebecca has applied for teaching positions in international schools in Malaysia. She describes the decision not as leaving America, but as choosing to live without a specific weight that she had been carrying so long she had forgotten it was not a universal feature of being alive in public. Safety in America is not something most Americans think critically about because it requires a comparison point. Malaysia was Rebecca's comparison point. And once you have felt the difference in your body, not read about it, actually felt it, it changes the calculation permanently. Which brings me to the question that kept me awake for 2 nights during that trip. What does retirement actually look like for most Americans? And what does it look like in a country like Malaysia? The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances 2023 gives us the baseline. Median retirement savings for Americans aged 55 to 64, $134,000. Fidelity Investments 2024 retirement guidelines recommend $1.30 to $1.70 million for a comfortable U.S. retirement. The percentage of Americans currently on track to hit that number, approximately 12%, according to the National Institute on Retirement Security 2024 report. 12%. The average Social Security monthly benefit, $1,907. The average monthly cost of living for a retired American, $4,345, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics 2024 Consumer Expenditure Survey. The monthly deficit for a retiree living on Social Security alone, approximately $2,438 every month. Compounding. Now, a comfortable monthly retirement budget in Penang or Kuala Lumpur, $1,100 to $1,800. Social Security alone covers that. With money remaining. The MM2H program provides a legal long-term residency framework. Private healthcare at $15 to $40 per consultation eliminates the Medicare gap anxiety entirely. Zero inheritance tax. Zero capital gains tax on most assets. Savings compound without the erosion that the American tax structure applies to them. Frank and Dorothy Callahan are both 67. Frank is a retired factory worker from Cleveland, Ohio. Dorothy is a former school aide. Combined Social Security income, $3,100 per month. No significant savings. A lifetime of working-class employment in a post-industrial city produced the retirement that the statistics predict for most Americans in their position. In Cleveland, $3,100 did not cover their baseline expenses. In winter months, they were making choices between heating and groceries. Not as a figure of speech. As a monthly calculation. Their youngest daughter had been living in Malaysia for 3 years. She invited them for an extended visit. Frank said the first week, he kept waiting for the catch. For the thing that would reveal why this was unsustainable or unsafe or somehow not as real as it appeared. He kept doing the math. Checking the numbers against what he was actually spending. The math kept coming out the same. Their $3,100 covered everything: rent, food, utilities, transport, medical, social life, with $900 remaining at the end of every month. In Cleveland, they had been $800 short. The difference was not $900. The difference was $1,700 per month. At 67. When the options for changing the American side of that equation had effectively closed. Frank and Dorothy applied for MM2H and relocated permanently. Frank describes the retirement he is now living as the one he spent 40 years of factory work believing he would never have. Dorothy joined a community garden and an English language book club. She says her social life at 67 is richer than it was at 47. The American retirement crisis is real. It is documented. It is arithmetic, not politics. And Malaysia is not a solution for everyone. But for Americans with Social Security income, modest savings, and the willingness to build a life somewhere genuinely different, it is a solution that actually works. That the numbers confirm. That people like Frank and Dorothy are living proof of. Now let me talk about opportunity. Because this is the argument I hear most often from people who push back on this comparison. And it deserves to be taken seriously. America offers the highest earning potential in the world for top performers in specific industries. The venture capital ecosystem is unmatched. The startup culture is genuinely without global parallel. These things are true and they matter. But opportunity has a second dimension that the American narrative consistently underweights. It is not just about how high the ceiling goes. It is about the ratio between what you earn and what your life actually costs. And that ratio, for the vast majority of Americans who are not in the top 10% of earners, has been deteriorating for more than 20 years. An American earning $70,000 per year in New York City, after tax, rent, healthcare, and basic living costs, has less real purchasing power for quality of life than an American earning that same salary remotely from Kuala Lumpur. That is not an opinion. It is arithmetic that anyone can verify in 15 minutes with a calculator and Numbeo. Marcus Webb is 34 years old. Software developer from Atlanta. Earning $95,000 per year remotely. After rent, student loan payments of $680 per month, groceries, utilities, and the unavoidable costs of existing in Atlanta, he was saving less than $600 per month. On $95,000 per year. He relocated to Kuala Lumpur on the DE Rantau Digital Nomad Pass. Same job. Same salary. Same US employer. Same Slack channels. Same deadlines. On the last day of his first month in KL, he checked his bank account expecting the familiar number. The balance showed $3,800. He called his mother. He did not know exactly what to say. He told her the number. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Son, what have we been doing?" Marcus now saves $3,500 to $4,000 per month. He is paying off his student loans at 5 times his previous rate. He has opened an investment account, the first of his adult life, containing more than emergency reserves. He works the same hours. He produces the same work. He lives, by every measurable metric, significantly better. A 2024 study by Numbeo Partners, the largest annual survey of independent workers globally, found that American remote workers who relocated to countries with lower costs and equivalent or higher quality of life reported a 67% improvement in financial well-being and a 54% reduction in work-related stress within 12 months of relocation. The income is American. The costs are Malaysian. And the difference is life-changing. But I want to tell you about something that surprised me more than any financial data. Because every American I spoke with who made this move, across all ages, all income levels, all professional backgrounds, reported something they had not expected. Something that no cost calculator prepared them for. They reported ordinary pleasure. Not vacation pleasure. Not special occasion pleasure. The specific, unremarkable, Tuesday morning quality of daily life. And they reported it as qualitatively different and significantly richer than anything they had experienced in America. The APA Stress in America 2024 survey found that 77% of Americans report money as a significant source of daily stress. Harvard Business Review research found that 62% of American workers eat lunch alone at their desks. The U.S. Travel Association found Americans use an average of 17 of their already limited vacation days. And the U.S. Surgeon General declared loneliness a public health epidemic in 2023, with 50% of Americans reporting measurable social isolation. These are not dramatic statistics. They are descriptions of the texture of ordinary American daily life. Malaysia's hawker culture is the most visible contrast. UNESCO recognized it as intangible cultural heritage in 2024, not just the food, but the social function of it. Meals eaten communally. Across age groups, across cultural communities, at tables shared with strangers who become neighbors. For $1.50 to $4 per meal. As the default fabric of daily life rather than a scheduled social event. Imagine starting every morning with a $2 breakfast that a cook has spent 40 years perfecting. Imagine eating it at a table with people you know by name, not because you planned a dinner, but because this is simply where you both eat every morning. The char kway teow smell reaching you before you turn the corner. Smoky, rich, the wok hay cutting through the morning air. The condensed milk tea arriving without you ordering it because you have been coming long enough that it is simply known. That is a Tuesday. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Happiness Studies found that access to affordable communal dining experiences was one of the strongest predictors of daily subjective well-being across cultures. Malaysia's hawker culture scored in the top 5% globally for this specific metric. In America, a quality meal in a genuinely social setting costs a minimum of $25 and requires advanced planning. In Malaysia, it is the infrastructure of the ordinary day. And that difference, between pleasure as an occasional expense and pleasure as the default texture of living, compounds across every morning, every unremarkable Tuesday, in ways that eventually show up in mental health data, in cortisol levels, in the specific look on people's faces when you ask them sincerely how they are. Now, this video is not anti-American. And honesty requires me to say clearly what America offers that Malaysia does not and what Malaysia cannot replace. For the highest earners in specific industries, finance at the senior level, technology leadership, entertainment, America's income ceiling is genuinely unmatched. The venture capital ecosystem, the startup culture, the creative energy of cities like New York and Los Angeles are real and valuable, and Malaysia does not replicate them. For most people watching this, the most significant thing Malaysia cannot replace is proximity to family. It is the most consistently cited reason that Americans who research this comparison thoroughly choose not to make the move. And it is a completely valid reason. The calculus of being far from aging parents, from adult children, from the specific web of relationships that constitute a life built in one place, that is real and it is personal, and no cost comparison touches it. Professional networks built over careers in American industries. Career paths requiring US physical presence. The cultural identity and sense of belonging that comes from being home. These belong in any honest assessment. But here is what knowing this comparison does, even for people who never move. Knowing that a $22 doctor's visit is possible somewhere on Earth makes you less willing to accept a $400 one without question. Knowing that a comfortable retirement on Social Security is achievable somewhere changes the retirement anxiety from an inevitable American condition into a policy arrangement that could theoretically be different. Knowledge changes negotiating position. Even when you never move, knowing what is possible elsewhere changes how clearly you see what you are accepting at home. Every American I spoke with who has made this move and stayed for more than a year reports one thing that surprised them more than any practical advantage. More than the money. More than the healthcare cost. More than the safety. They described the realization that the stress they had been carrying in America had been so pervasive, so normalized, so seamlessly woven into the texture of daily consciousness that they had stopped recognizing it as stress. They had classified it as reality, as the price of being alive in the world. Financial anxiety, the background calculation of whether you can afford to get sick. Safety anxiety, the unconscious environmental assessment of every public space. Retirement anxiety, the mathematical awareness that the future is financially precarious regardless of how hard you work. Status anxiety, the specific American pressure around income, title, neighborhood, and consumption as measures of worth. When those lifted, when the financial dread of a medical appointment stopped being a background calculation, when the retirement math stopped producing a deficit every month, when the unconscious safety scan of public spaces turned off, people felt the difference the way you feel a sound stop that you had been hearing so long you thought it was silence. Frank Callahan said something in our conversation that I wrote down immediately and have thought about many times since. He said, "I spent 40 years believing that the stress was the price of the opportunity. That you could not have one without the other. That the anxiety and the pressure and the constant financial calculation were simply what life cost. That was the deal." Malaysia showed me that was not a universal truth. It was an American arrangement. And arrangements, Frank said, can change. I thought America was number one. In some things, important things, it still is. In the highest ceiling for the highest earners. In the creative energy of its culture. in certain dimensions of freedom and legal protection that matter and should not be dismissed. But in the things that determine how an ordinary Tuesday feels, in the daily texture of a life that has enough money, enough safety, enough community, enough medical care, enough ease to simply exist without constant calculation, Malaysia does not just compete with America. For a specific category of person, in a specific set of circumstances, it wins. So here is what I want you to do right now. Run one number. Take your monthly income, whatever it is. Then calculate what your life would look like if your rent was $600, your groceries were $150, and your doctor's visit cost $22. What would you do with the difference? Would it clear your debt? Fund your retirement at a rate that actually changes the trajectory? Let you work fewer hours without financial panic? Give you options that currently feel like they belong to people with more money than you, when actually they might just belong to people living in a different place? Run that number. Use Numbeo. Use your real income, not averages. It takes 15 minutes. Then come back here and tell me in the comments what you found. Because I have a feeling that for a significant number of people watching this video right now, that calculation is going to be the most clarifying thing you have done in years. And the conversation that is about to happen in the comments below, I genuinely want to be part of it. Because the question of where to build a life, and whether the place you are currently building it is actually working for you, is one of the most important questions a person can honestly ask themselves. It deserves more than a rankings list. It deserves honesty. Next week, we are covering the practical, step-by-step reality of how Americans are actually making this move. The visa pathway. The banking reality. The first 6 months. The things that went wrong and how people navigated them. The complete, unfiltered picture. Because inspiration without information is just entertainment. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss it. We will see you there.